Zoom is not working for me.
So, hello everyone. You think by now I'd remember to turn off mute, and here we are. So good to see you all. And welcome to another Tuesday. I did have a beautiful new camera to try today, and of course it didn't work. So you know what? You always have plan B. So to all of you who are new to this amazing community, welcome, welcome, welcome. It is so great to see you here. If you don't know me yet, my name is Alex Tullio. I'm the CEO of Financial Executive Women. We are a fabulous membership organisation all about the positive progression of women in financial services. We believe in developing a really deep community, a network of peers, and really supporting each other to progress our careers. So welcome to our members and regulars. It is always great to see you, and it is super exciting that, of course, as Cam said, we are streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and of course via Zoom. So as I always say, please do share this link. We have built such an incredible community over now nearly 4 months. Can you believe it? So we want to keep building that community. So please do share the link. This is free for all employees of our amazing corporate partners, who of course we wouldn't be here without. But as I do always say, even if you know someone who would benefit from this incredible community who isn't an employee of one of these corporate partners, refer them anyway. We love to make deeper connections. As a quick call out to all of you who are looking to build your networks, we get loads and loads of feedback from our members that you struggle a bit to build your networks. You're a bit shy, you hang back. These are the perfect calls to connect on with other people that you don't know. You've got a perfect icebreaker. So there's your homework for today's call. Thanks, Cam. So what have we got coming up? We've got heaps, as always. So, of course, we've got an amazing speaker today, Michael Phillipou, who I'll introduce in just a moment. Tomorrow, we have Michael Dixon. Now, I'm a little bit nervous about Michael in a good way, because when we were doing our promo, he was threatening karaoke. Now, I am fine with him doing karaoke. He's a professional muso, but there's no way I'm belting out Bon Jovi or anything like that. So I can reassure you on that front. But he's an expert in creativity. So it's going to be a super interesting chat tomorrow about how we apply creativity to leadership life. And yes, even in financial services, not known for creativity. And then on Thursday, I'm super excited about my chat with Donna Deswart. Donna is a CEO of a not-for-profit called Fitted for Work. And when I was chatting to Donna, I said, look, I know that you help outfit women who are trying to get back into the workforce, go for interviews and all that sort of thing, but they do so much more than that. They have helped over 40,000 women in their 12-year lifetime as a business. So it's pretty amazing stuff. So that's Thursday. Now, of course, we also bring you our masterclasses. So for all our members, you know that the masterclasses that we bring you are part of your membership. So as I always remind you, take advantage of this. You can attend live on Fridays, and of course, you can actually go and watch them in our library as well if you're a member. Now, I do know that we've got the amazing Simon Dowling this Friday, who is there waiting. I can see you, Simon, with your lovely plants in the background. Do you want to give us a bit of a unmute yourself and tell us a bit about the masterclass on Friday?
Hello. Thank you. Yes, unmute yourself. Good tip.
If only I followed that.
Look, I'm really excited about running this masterclass, so thank you for inviting me to do so. So we're going to be looking at, I suppose the whole question that this masterclass is about, Alex, is how do we get people on board with our ideas, our initiatives, our projects? How do we get them working with us and cooperating with us and taking action, not because they have to, but because they want to? And I think this skill of creating engaged teams, engaged project partners and so forth is such a critical piece of leading, as I call it, with a small L. So it's not about, you know, the role, the position, the title you're in. This is not about influencing from a place of authority. It's about getting stuff done, making stuff happen in all directions. So we're going to be looking at that in a really practical way. We've got an hour together or just over an hour, I think. So we're going to dive in and have a look at, I want to introduce everyone to a framework that I use to understand. It's like a roadmap for this skill. and then dig into some really practical suggestions about how you can go about putting some of those ideas into practice, and then fielding some Q&A as well. So it'll be rock and roll.
Well, it is going to be fun. You are a very fun guy. But for all of you who don't yet know Simon, you are one of our most popular speakers to date, Simon, on this live stream. No pressure, Mick, who's coming up. But you are one of our most interesting speakers. And for those of you who haven't been to a masterclass with Simon yet, we are very, very lucky to have this man. So register for the masterclass. It's going to be super practical, very entertaining. I've worked with Simon for many years now, so I know just how good he is. So if you want to register, as I said, for members, please do just click the link. I'm sure Cam's put one in the chat, or go to our website. And for those of you who aren't yet members, I wave my hands around and talk passionately about this organisation because we do amazing work and we really build deep communities and networks and bring you incredible people like Simon. So because I want you to find out what this amazingness is for yourself, we do invite you to attend one of our events on us. So if you haven't attended an event and you're not yet a member, please do take this opportunity to experience what FEW is all about. And you can also register. I'm sure Cam's put that link in the chat for Simon's masterclass on Friday. Simon, thanks for dropping in. Can't wait to see you on Friday.
Thanks, Alex. Look forward to it. See everyone there.
So without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Michael Phillipou, though I'm used to calling you Mick. But let me introduce Michael for those of you who don't yet know him, and then we're going to get right into it. So Mick has 20 years experience in financial services, holding executive people leadership roles in advice, retail and business banking, digital banking, and enterprise technology sales and transformation programs for Westpac, MLC-aligned businesses, Bendigo Bank, Lodex, and now FinTech market leader Sandstone Technology. A passionate banking, financial services and technology executive, Mick is the Chief Customer Officer for Sandstone Technology, responsible for the company's global marketing, sales and partnerships across Australia, New Zealand, Asia and the European markets. On a personal note, Michael is married to Elizabeth and they have 3 children who they enjoy running, riding and many other outdoor activities with. Welcome, Mick. Great to have you here. Let's get rid of this slide.
Thank you very much, Alex. Pleasure to be here, and hello to everyone on the call.
It feels very formal calling you Michael. I'm used to calling you Mick, so is that okay if I call you Mick today?
Oh, look, I'd rather go with Mick, Alex. I mean, the only time I've ever called Michael was when I'm either in trouble for my mum or my wife.
Yep. I get it. So, mate, as I always do, it's great to get the formal bio out of the way as a bit of context and background, but it's so much more interesting to hear from you just a bit about, who is Mick Phillipou? First of all, tell us about your amazing wife and your 3 kids.
Yes, so I'm an Adelaide boy originally and married to Elizabeth, met Elizabeth back in SA. When she was part of the AIS, actually, with cycling, and fortunate enough to have an opportunistic meeting with her by one of my cousins, and then we moved to Sydney in 2013, been here for 7 years to pursue my career over here, obviously with financial services being a hub and more opportunities than over in Adelaide, but also in addition to that, to be closer to Liz's family. And so kids, we've got 3, Peter 7, Stephanie 5, and Rena's 2. So we've got our hands full at the moment, but I really must say that my wife does all the heavy lifting there, so I'm lucky that she's got strong shoulders and she's exceptionally understanding.
And I've got to say, Mick, you and I have known each other for some years now, and you have been very consistent in giving Liz a lot of the credit for the hard work that she does. Tell us a bit about your journey, I guess, into leadership roles and financial services, and how did you end up where you are today?
Well, originally, I've been someone that's been really passionate about sport to start with, and played sport at a reasonably high level back in South Australia, and came up through the ranks in Aussie rules, and then in running as well, and was fortunate enough to be appointed as captain of a number of those sporting teams which I played for, be it through football, basketball, etc. And something that just naturally I gravitated towards, and wanting to be someone to help guide, coach, listen, and learn from the players. And then Dad was an actuary by trade, and so we're in financial services naturally. Had his own small business. Godfrey Weston was actually spun out of National Mutual back in 1986, and he was the sole authorised representative. So hence the affinity with financial services and financial planning back in SA and NT in those days. And so almost fell into the family business of financial planning. So Godfrey Weston became Godfrey Pembroke, merged with Pembroke after Lendlease spun it out late in the 90s, and then MLC took ownership in, I think it was 2001. And anyway, so it became part of that business in financial planning. And as a small business, as you know, Alex, you know, from your experience now, you do everything from sweeping the floor to learning about power planning to facing into clients. But what I naturally had an affinity to was really migrating into a leadership role. Just naturally felt comfortable there in terms of setting up system structures and really get a lot of enjoyment and satisfaction out of helping others to achieve their goals, their dreams, and connect to their passions. And so hence I then just pursued my career after several years with Godfrey Pembroke into a range of different employers, including Tower Australia, as a sales manager there, and then off to an MLC-aligned business as an advice leader, to Westpac, to Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, where I had the pleasure of working under you for a number of years, which was exceptionally enjoyable. And then I think I became fascinated with what was happening with technology in terms of the how it was transforming the way consumers were being able to consume financial services products. And so the likes of Revolut, TransferWise, Monzo, Monese, Starling Bank, particularly over in the UK, and 26 in Germany, and then others over in Credit Karma, over in America, Lending Club, massive businesses that had really just evolved pretty quickly out of using technology to enable the distribution of financial services products and banking products. And so hence took a leap of faith in late 2016 into a startup, Lodex, with myself and a number of other investors and founders, and was able to build a few different platforms. Not myself personally, I was a leader of that business, but certainly went about assembling teams that could build technology platforms that would make a difference in this space. And then had, I guess, early to mid last year was considering our opportunities as we were divesting our position from Lodex itself, and Sandstone. I was just fortunate enough to have a discussion with the owners and founders of this company, and it was just almost like the perfect storm, perfect marriage to have the opportunity to work for a vendor or a strategic partner that was going to help banks move through transformational programs, because as we know, it's now a completely digital game in banking and financial services. Certainly we're not lost on the fact that you need human relationships, and they'll play a critical part. And so, I was lucky enough to be offered this role to lead the sales, marketing, global partnerships for the business. And just it's been a very exciting journey thus far, nearly a year in, and a lot of work to do. And obviously COVID has brought forward and then probably almost magnified a lot of those needs for banks and financial services organisations to be more digitally enabled, because now there's a flight, given this amalgamation of the fact that social distancing is there, so it's forced upon people, and obviously for the safety of different banks, for their staff, the well-being of people generally, that with the fact that, if you have a look at some of the stats, just quite incredible. Literally millions upon millions of downloads of banking applications and financial services applications over the last few months in terms of growth, by virtue of the fact that it's forced upon them. So anyway, fortunate to be in this category. A very long-winded answer, but I think it's a part of meticulous planning career-wise, as well as a bit of gut feel around what was right for me, and just being able to grab those opportunities when they came my way.
That's a great answer. And Mick, as you're talking, so obviously, as everyone can gather, Mick and I work together. So there's lots I want to pull some threads here, Mick. So one of the first, in no particular order, because I remember when you left Bendigo, and as any of you with very talented team members, it's always that bittersweet moment. I remember, Mick, when you said you were going to pursue something else, really didn't want to lose you, but I was so excited for you because you were going into this entrepreneurial venture, and it was a calculated move, but it was something completely different. You took that leap of faith that a lot of people talk about but never have the courage to do. Talk to us a bit about that point when you went from corporate and into Lodex, which was very entrepreneurial, and of course now you're back. I mean, you're in corporate again, entrepreneurial organisation as well. Sandstone is. But tell us a bit about making that transition. What were some of the biggest challenges, differences that you saw from going corporate to Lodex, first of all?
Well, market differences in retrospect, and possibly so obviously a fair bit of planning went into that, and given the fact that myself and another gentleman in particular, and then others, investors that we needed to bring into backing the company itself. So we were a startup. We were studying the market in the offshore markets, in particular the United Kingdom, with some of those businesses we spoke about, Revolut, Monzo, etc. And transfer-wise, from a international payments perspective, and had some ideas around. We wanted to step out of the corporate world, challenge ourselves to learn around how we could add value to financial services in the Australian market using technology, with a mix of technology and also data, given that data is really the new oil, and that's where the war is at present. And so I think the things that really we needed to consider were the preparation of how to raise capital, how to bring in investment, how to invest ourselves, going from being a secure, terrific employer that Bendigo was, and having a team and resources around you that you could leverage, tap into, versus needing to literally do everything yourself, from building pitch decks to going to attract that capital, sell, sweep the floor of the office and tidy the bins up yourself. So very different, obviously a very different setup environment that you're working through. And I think I probably underestimated how much work was going to be involved from where I was sitting at that time in the corporate position, then getting doing all the planning and preparation and getting ready to step out into small business, and small business it was. And so I think it's a combination of capital, resource, time, sacrifice that you then need to make as a result of you don't have that regular fixed income coming in, and you need to build that from scratch.
Very different world. And so what are your learnings from that experience that you're now taking into your current role? Like what? Because I mean, you were an experienced business leader before then, but you're right, it is a completely different ball game. Small business, growing something from scratch. So what have you taken now into your next career evolution?
A number of learnings. I think the one critical learning that always stands out, whether it's from small business or larger business, is that, and it's almost like marriage, that you really want to find the people, the best possible people you can, and place them in the right spot. And so I think it's about a few things: having a deep connection with the organisation and their purpose of what they're doing, what they stand for, having alignment there. The learning, and so I think the critical learning is always that you need to have the best people you possibly can have from a values DNA perspective, being aligned on purpose, and obviously from a capability perspective, having that at a high level. But capability you can train people if they've got the right attitude and they want to learn and they have a certain baseline level of skill. So I think that best people and culture is so critical. And so I think coming into Sandstone, having, I guess, screening the organisation and considering what was right for me, it was really having that mix of corporate disciplines and professionalism blended and mixed with a culture of entrepreneurialism that could be nimble, can be agile, and can move quickly if needed.
So let's talk about a culture of entrepreneurialism, because, and you and I have chatted about this many times, but I'm endlessly fascinated because you do, having both of us, we've worked in small business and all that sort of thing, as well as big corporate. So many corporates aspire to having a more entrepreneurial culture and being, they're much used, we want to be more agile and, all the words, but underneath nothing's really changed. So talk to me a bit about how do you, with all your experience in your current role, how do you instill a more entrepreneurial culture in bigger corporates? There's a lot of our audience is from, bigger corporates that are still hierarchical, that do have a lot of bureaucracy. How do you start to really instill a more entrepreneurial culture, in your view?
I think you focus on it, and so as we alluded to in the precursor to this meeting today and this discussion today, first who, then what, and again, not my teachings, not my learnings, but having the opportunity to read Good to Great and use that as a blueprint from Jim Collins. Mm-hmm. It's really about organisationally, before you set strategy, before you set vision, before you set up your culture, you certainly have in mind what your culture, what you want to be, and if that's agile, if that's nimble, if that's to be able to respond to the market, then you got to go and recruit the people, assemble the team that will then tell you and tell the organisation how to best do that. So I think we are a very established organisation. Sandstone itself, it's circa 350 people across a number of different countries, Australia, Philippines, and also the United Kingdom, and you do get to a point where, as you get bigger, unless you've got your systems and your structures set up that are scalable, it becomes more difficult to be agile and be nimble. So I think those systems and structures that you set up to enable that and focus on it and really put an emphasis. For example, if we're an innovative company, we're arguably the market leader when it comes to lending origination in Australia. We're quite the dominant player in that regard. However, we don't rest on our laurels. We need to continually innovate. We need to stay ahead of the pack and make sure that we're responding to what customers and also the market trends are indicating. So we take learnings, I suppose, when it comes to being agile and nimble, we take learnings by studying offshore markets and try and anticipate what trends might be coming and try and head them off and cut them off at the pass, so that we're up there with those first movers, or we're fast followers. And so then it's about putting in systems in place where, if you are agile, and we also build in an agile fashion too. So we're not waterfall approach. We can certainly do that when it comes to building transformational programs, or we're building systems for banks and financial services institutions. We can do a mix of both, but there's a bend towards being more agile and being able to innovate and differentiate quite quickly. And the way you can do that is having fast, iterative releases of technology in this aspect, but then you need your workforce set up to do that. And so I think it's having a focus, having a structure, your personnel, your HR, and then your systems to be able to support that.
So, because there's a lot to that, isn't it? And you beat me to it, because I was going to ask you about, of all the things that you're talking about, I mean, there's so much there. And thanks, Matthew. I can see your question. I'm going to ask that in a second. there's a lot to this about being outward looking, not being too inward looking, knowing what the market's doing, identifying trends. But I want to go a bit more into setting your workforce up for that, because I know a passion, I mean, you've already just said it, but a big passion of yours is around people. And I it's funny the things you remember, isn't it? So I remember when you first joined the bank, and we had been working together for a while, and I remember that you said to me, and I'll put words in your mouth a little bit, but you said something to me like, always be recruiting. And I remember that at the time, I was like, I mean, this is where you learn something from everyone that you surround yourself with. And I remember that you said to me that you were always made the time, whether it was Fridays or whatever, to meet and know the talent in the marketplace. And you were always having conversations with people, whether or not you actually had a job to recruit for, because you always knew where the talent was. So when you did have a job, that you were in a really great place. So I remember that, Mick. I remember a lot of things, and that's always stuck with me as such a fantastic discipline. So I know people are your passion. How do you set up a workforce that can respond to the pace at which you work? How much of that is talent? How much of it is systems, trust, clear KPIs, all of the above? Talk to us a bit about that.
There's a lot to cover there, and I might pick a few areas off. And so I think, and that's right. That was a learning that was given to me from a former boss who's now works for Combank, Gordon Cooper, and Gail Kelly was the CEO at the time for us at Westpac, and inspirational. Arguably the best public speaker I've ever heard. Just inspiring type of character. But what they had said, and Gordon passed this on to me at the time. He said, we might not be appointing, but we should always be recruiting. And so that discipline was instilled into me some 10 years ago, that we should know where the best talent is, so that if all of our people go, heaven forbid, all of your leaders are swept away, you've got a plan. And so I think to address that point, and that remains true for me today. I spend a lot of time networking and just understanding where the greatest talent is. And it's just a good way to have your finger on the pulse in terms of how your competitors are operating, how they work, and where that opportunity might be for us in terms of not poaching that talent per se, but even there's always opportunities even collaborating with your competitors as well, and we look for those opportunities too. When it comes to now, that's one piece. In terms of the actual question, there's so much there. And you're going to almost refresh my memory of what the exact question was.
Well, I think it's, and you're right. Sorry, it was part statement, part multiple questions. So I'm happy to rephrase for you. It was just with this theme of talent and entrepreneurialism. And so Matthew's actually asked, are the skills you gain in the corporate world applicable to small business and an entrepreneurial mindset? But how are you setting up your workforce at Sandstone to respond in an entrepreneurial way? So my question was really, what part does talent play? The structures, what part does having the right structures play? Trust in your people, the right KPIs, all those kind of factors. How do you set up a workforce that can be more entrepreneurial?
Well, I think the first thing you need to do in my opinion, is as you come together with a new team, so there's 4 stages, aren't there? You need to form, storm, norm, perform. And so these stages, you need to work through those stages as any team in order to be able to come to that quadrant of performance and perform at a sustained level. So I think the first thing is having real clarity on what's the purpose of your team and what are the objectives of the team specifically. And so in any session, for every team I've ever come into, the first thing I do is read the annual reports of the organisation, be really clear on what their strategic goals and deliverables are and where they're going. And then how does the business unit that I'm leading feed into that? And obviously read the current plan that you've inherited, and get a pulse check on it. It's like financial planning, right? You do a fact find of the business across people, the performance of those people, reading their annual reviews, the last 3 years' annual reviews, having a clinical look at that, looking at the hard data of the outputs. What are the customers telling us about our business? What are our business partners telling us? What are our external partners telling us? Grabbing all that information and then forming, and then bringing your team together and challenging the plan you have, setting goals collectively so that you build them collectively. We always appoint champions across different pillars of those strategies, be it the financials, onboarding new customers, working with our existing customers. So setting goals across all of those pillars and having your staff, the staff actually own those goals and champion those goals moving forward. And so, and then the piece prior to that is actually the cultural piece, assessing what's the culture of the organisation, the culture of the team, because as you know, culture eats strategy. And again, it's not my wording, it's Peter Drucker's wording. And I'll never forget sitting down with Angus Sullivan, who's, the group exec from CBA. And he said to me, if you're 10% or 15% different to the culture, it doesn't matter that your ways might be better, perceived better, or give you better outcomes. But the culture will spit you out. So you can't be too different to the culture because you'll be a fish out of water. And it's always stuck with me. So you got to move and try and influence across multiple lines. And as you go with middle management or executive management, you've got to influence up, sideways, and down. So it's 360. And so all of those areas are really important to spend time on. And I'm covering a lot of area here, but again, another great piece of advice that I was given was at Westpac, because I always believe that if you got the best results, that should take care of itself. But I never forget that I went through high performance training with Westpac with a guy by the name of Andy Meikle, who was just decorated in management consulting, and at the time Westpac used Andy as a management consultant for all their executives and trained us around high performance, building high performing teams. And what he said was, though, there's 3 areas that are really important for your career if you're interested in fostering your career. 1 are results, bucket number 1. Bucket number 2 is having political relationships internally and externally. And bucket number 3 is being impressive at impromptu opportunities. He said all 3 buckets are equal in value. It's not one over the other. So this was a good guide. So you can kind of figure out where's the barometer of where you need to play. Are you full in one bucket? Are you less full in the other? And less full in the other? So how do you get that balance and make sure that you're playing in each one? So, because I mean, no one else has got a mortgage on your career. You're the only one that's got that. And so hence, so going back to the question, sorry, in terms of building trust and culture, I think, so we always set up this exercise of assessing what is the culture currently within the team and what is that a subculture of the organisation, or is it aligned to the culture of the organisation? And then what do we want to be famous for? What culture do we want to build? And so if you take the time to gain the buy-in of the team itself, and we have a culture that we're striving to meet and hit and reflect upon in 12 months' time. So once you've decided where you want to go culturally, what that looks like, plus goals and objectives wise for the organisation, then it's just tracking our progress against that religiously. I'm getting tied up here on some of the words, but having a regimented operating rhythm and discipline to actually track your progress accordingly, and that of your team. And so that way you can, if you're not quite on course, if you're slightly off the highway and you've gone down a dead end, you can quickly correct and get back on course and make sure that you're providing the support and coaching to your team that they need to access in order to do that.
Again, Mick, there's so much there, but it's great. We're covering a lot of ground. I told you this would be organic and we'd go down tangents, so that's completely okay. I want to go, I want to again, and Danielle, thank you for your question as well. So I want to go back to Matthew's question, so which I find interesting, because I think a lot of times we focus on what can entrepreneurial experience, you know, from you, Lodex into Sandstone, what could you take from your experience in Lodex being more entrepreneurial startup to a more corporate structure? Matthew's question is also, you know, what are the skills that you gain in a corporate world that are then applicable to? So I guess what stood you in good stead from your corporate experience when you went into Lodex? As you've already said, you know, it was a lot more work than what you anticipated, but what corporate skills did you use to build and grow that business successfully?
Well, look, I think from a corporate perspective, a great question, Matthew. Certainly the skills are very applicable both ways, from what you learn in small business. And I came from small business to start with. And so from a small business, let me start with that, going that way and then going back the other way. But I think they're, you know, massively interchangeable. So the skills I learned in small business to start with in my career were around being really well organised, building systems and routines and processes, because at that time, you know, when I started off in financial planning, you know, I was pretty much doing administration and then support to paraplanning to advising and doing a lot of the outbound business development, hosting presentations, but even actually organising those seminars and presentations, very much almost like this setup that you guys are working through, where I had to go and bring on and host in front of different audiences, literally to pitch, to attract potential customers. And so I think from that you learn about sales, marketing, pitching, administration, planning, obviously relationship management, influencing, all the necessary skills and leadership management, all the necessary skills that are either required in small business to large corporate, and back the other way. So I think from a corporate perspective, what you do, I think as you go higher in your leadership career, you recognise that you have more resources that you've got access to in your team. And it's really important that as a leader, your role is to get rid of the barriers for people. The trick is not to motivate people. It's actually not to demotivate people. That's the art of the leader. The leader is the one who needs to sit back, take away all the obstacles that staff that are being challenged by, and help them run as faster than they thought they could run, so to speak, you know, from an analogy perspective. So this is where I play, and there's a time to lead from the back, and that's when your team's winning. And there's a time to lead from the front, and that's when your team's being hit hard and bearing the brunt for them, to shield them and take the pressure away. So all of those skills you can do you learn experiences in both corporate and small business. And I think you know, every experience is just education, and I think you only waste that education if you don't then apply it.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I actually, I don't think I've ever heard you say it before. I love that your role as the leader is not to motivate, it's not to demotivate. So, I mean, and it's so true as you described that. God, so much more I've still got to ask you, Mick. The one thing I just wanted to touch on there that you mentioned about, you know, the magic of learning experiences. Right, every experience you learn something from, whether you apply it or not, is a whole different scenario. One of the things that I always know about you is that, and I know you're a big fan of Jim Collins and, you know, lots of other very wise heads, but we can all read a book, can't we? We can all read a book and go, wow, they're really good principles, and then do nothing with them. The thing I love about you that you still do today, and discipline, when I think of you, I think of discipline and high performance. Like, you're very focused. So you take the theories and the learnings and then you apply them in real life to business, which is quite a skill, and you've got to work hard at it. Tell us some of the things that you really work hard to apply practically that you've learned from, say, a Collins or others.
Well, I think, you know, Collins talks about confronting the brutal facts and yet not losing faith. And so the art and I don't know, for those that may or may not have read Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, and again, fortunate enough to be issued with a copy signed from Jason Yetton, who was a group executive for Westpac back in the day that I was there. And this just really stuck with me, you know, this component of the book, because I think no doubt many of you do this, and you do this as leaders naturally, that there are, it's things that you're trying to figure out what's working, what's not working, and invariably you spend more time once you understand what's not working to resolve that so that you can help your team run faster. Those leaders that have been able to confront the brutal facts and resolve, address those issues to unstick and unlock the potential have been able to achieve astounding results. And so I think, you know, this piece of actually tackling issues head on and not letting them fester is so critical. And having the faith in yourself and having the confidence in yourself and your team that once you do understand what those issues are and you do address them, and it's just an issue, but it needs to be solved. And so I think, again, great advice I was given from a leader back in Gordon Cooper, I mentioned previously at Westpac. He said to me, don't get frustrated with people or process. And that always stuck with me, because you can find yourself at times, gee whiz, you know, why would they do that? Why would that person do that? And why is that process like that? But that quickly made me think, okay, it just is the way it is. Now if we need to change it, let's change it and take the steps in order to address that accordingly. So I think this is the one critical part that I spend time on in terms of managing performance. And managing performance, it is addressing those issues, providing the support to address the gaps for the people in your team, and in order to lift that performance. And if that can't be lifted, then it's about making those calls to support people to be better aligned to what suits them career-wise. And then there are some of the harder calls to make as well.
Such great advice. Hey, I want to talk to you quickly in the final moments. How did this go so fast? It evaporates. Let's talk about diversity, because again, you and I have talked about diversity, and it's not just gender diversity or gender equality, even though obviously we're very passionate about that here, and I know you're passionate about, and we've talked about the fact that there aren't enough women in tech, for example. But let's talk about what's your views on the importance of diversity and building strong talent pipelines that are diverse?
Oh, it's critical. It's critical. Again, I point back to Gail Kelly at Westpac, and Gail was a terrific leader in terms of her commercial results. But culturally and from an engagement perspective, she just had you gripped. And if you were someone that was passionate, and passion comes internally, and as does inspiration. So when I make this reference before around, well, your trick is not to inspire, not to motivate people, because most people are motivated anyway. It's about not demotivating them. To this extent, what Gail had introduced to Westpac was a need to have women in leadership at a certain percentage. So Westpac was severely underrepresented in women in senior leadership roles, and at which time it might have been at circa 30% of holding senior roles. Now, the goal was to lift it to 40%, and then 45 and 50. And what we found was that, and all the evidence and research supported this, you know, around having diversity in terms of male, female, different bend on thinking, and making sure that you tapped into all of that knowledge and expertise of what a multicultural and a gender diverse team can do and deliver. And so personally, you know, I think you really need to tap into all of that capability, that expertise, that experience. And one example I give you is that I had the opportunity to lead a team for Westpac, which was as a general manager for South Sydney some years ago, and it's very diverse geographically in terms of ethnic representation across those markets. We had Chinese, Korean, Lebanese, Sri Lankan, Indian, Macedonian, Greeks, Italian. We had a very diverse representation of people through that geography, and so it was important for me. I had the opportunity to recruit, and I had 15 leaders through the region. Had the opportunity to recruit very specifically to the cultural sensitivities in order to make sure that we could capitalise on how people engaged and playing to the strengths of those different cultures. And so hence, from a female perspective, I was fortunate enough that the person that I'd taken over from had done a very good job in terms of having good representation of male and female and already in the region, and was able to add a few more females as well as some ethnic calls that proved to be fruitful. But again, I think, it's about leaning on the experts. You invariably have HR experts and that will have very good policies and process around that, and tapping into that internally in order to then be able to recruit accordingly.
Thanks, Vic. I know that's a big subject all by itself. Maybe we'll get more into that on another show. We're out of time, everyone, but Matthew has asked another question, which is great, Matthew. I love it because you actually beat me to it. So my question was going to be in a quick, a few questions, Mick. What are you reading right now? Matthew's actually gone, is there a book or a writer or a thought leader that you found particularly useful or applicable that most people might not have heard of that you could share?
Well, I reckon I'll still go to Collins. I'll still go to Jim Collins. A great book is Great by Choice. Great by Choice. And then because that's about, just very briefly, I'll tell you what that's about. That's about the study of, again, Collins studying a team two different teams that had to trek the South Pole. I can't remember North or South Pole, but anyway, it was about the 20-mile march, and they had to cross over from one point and get back to this point within whichever team that was able to do this through very trying conditions first would win. And anyway, they studied these teams, and it's about discipline and process and how these teams went about it. Obviously, one team won, and then they talk about the principles behind that. So that's a terrific book, ripping book, Great by Choice, by Jim Collins. Another ripper is Lafley and Martin, Playing to Win. And then again, that's a playbook for me around strategy. And so for those of you who don't know that, that's written by the ex Procter & Gamble CEO or executive chairman, as they would say over in the US. Again, an absolute ripper, and it talks about the 5 interlock steps of building strategy. So there are a couple of blueprint books, and so I think if you have time, if you do anything, read those two along with Playing to Win, and I don't think you'll go wrong.
Mate, that's awesome. Final 30 seconds. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received? You've shared a few. Is there the one single thing that you go back to time and again?
Oh, first who, then what.
Love it. So it's all about the people. What's one benefit? And again, you've referenced a few, which has been great throughout, but what's a real benefit of having some really wise mentors in your career, in your corner?
I think there's so many benefits from doing that. I've been lucky enough to be able to, use you as a mentor, Alex, over the journey. I've got several external mentors that I'll lean on and talk to, and it's not even, doesn't even have to be a formal relationship, as in a formal, can you be my mentor, please? It's more just being able to have that ability to bounce ideas off, and I actively call different people that I have immense admiration for in terms of how their career rolls. So on that point, growth, development, guidance, wisdom, and there's no substitute for experience. And so I think, tap into as many people as you possibly can and round it out. But I reckon the thing about, and I'd encourage everyone to have at least one external mentor and one internal mentor inside your organisation, which actually, absolutely will help your career to no end. You've gone frozen, Alex. Have I lost you?
I can hear you, but I don't know. Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you. All good. Yeah.
All right. Well, see, obviously the computer's telling us we're out of time. Mick, thank you so much. So much more that I could ask you. It's been a fantastic session, and you shared so much wisdom with us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'll see you tomorrow at 12. Don't forget, with the king of creativity himself, Michael Dixon, and Mick Phillipou. Thank you so much, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me. Cheers, everyone. Bye for now.